the corporate management team, and I was just moving to remind members to switch off mobile phones during the duration of the meeting, and to ask colleagues who are on Teams if they can mute their microphones when they're not speaking. So on that basis, I'll maybe ask the clerk to run through some introductory remarks and take the said on. Thank you.
Thank you, Cleland. Just to advise members that the meeting will be recorded as well as live streamed to be made available on the Council's YouTube channel. Can I ask those members who are participating remotely to please remember to mute their microphones unless invited to speak? For those in the room, can I ask that while you can use your laptop to view the papers, please do not join Teams, as this might cause some interference or feedback. For those in the room, if you wish to speak, please press the speak button on the microphone unit. This will then be queued in the system and you will be advised when it is your turn to speak. Those on MS Teams can use the raise hand icon, and please remember to click on the icon again to lower the hand once your question has been dealt with. When members and officers are speaking or questions are being asked, it's helpful for the interpreters if reference is made to page numbers, paragraph numbers, appendices, etc. It's also beneficial if you don't speak too quickly. Where a member has made a declaration of interest, they are required to leave the meeting prior to consideration of that item. Please advise at that stage that you are leaving the meeting and you will be re-invited back in when consideration of the item is concluded. For those using MS Teams, should you lose connection or have any technical issues during the meeting, please alert me by text if possible so that I can make the Chief Executive Provost aware of the issue. The mobile number is 07557 323 097, and details of that have been input to the chat. The Provost or Chief Executive may allow a short adjournment, or if a quorum still exists, then the meeting may continue to proceed. If there is a requirement for a vote, then it will be taken by roll call. Should you lose connection prior to a vote, you can text me your voting preference. Can I also ask that you only use the chat facility to advise of any technical issues or that you are leaving the meeting? Any other questions or comments should be communicated via the raise hand icon. I will begin by recording the meeting. It just takes a minute or so. Okay, that's confirmation that the meeting is now recording, and I'll now take the adjournment for this statutory meeting of the Council of the 18th of May 2022. So when I read out your name, can you please confirm your attendance? Councillor Allison? Councillor Anderson? Yeah. Councillor Barker? Present. Councillor Brad? Councillor Rogan? Present. Councillor Brown? Councillor Buchanan? Sorry, I should have said Councillor Archie Buchanan. Councillor Matthew Buchanan?
Yep.
Councillor Kalikis?
Yeah.
Councillor Carmichael? Councillor Chalmers? Councillor Clark? Yeah. Councillor Convery?
Yeah.
Councillor Cooper? Councillor Corbett?
Here.
Councillor Cowan? Oh, thank you. Councillor Cowie? Councillor Dempsey?
Here.
Councillor Devlin? Councillor Dewar? Councillor Donnelly? Councillor Fagan?
Here.
Councillor Faulkner? Councillor Ferguson?
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Ferguson Miller?
Here.
Councillor Frame? Councillor Fulton? Councillor Gowland? Councillor Gray?
Here.
Thank you. Councillor Hamilton? Councillor Handybode? Councillor Horn, Councillor Horsham, Councillor Hose, Councillor Keat.
Yeah, I'm here.
Thank you. Councillor Kerr, Councillor Lambie, Councillor Lennon, Councillor Lockhart,
Yep.
Councillor Logan, Councillor Loudon, Councillor MacDonald, Councillor Marsh,
Here.
Councillor McAdams,
Present.
Councillor McCallan, Councillor McClymont, Councillor McCreary, Councillor Leslie MacDonald, Councillor McDougall,
Here.
Councillor McGeever, Councillor McLaughlin, Councillor Nelson, Councillor Nugent.
Here.
Thank you. Councillor Ray, Councillor Razak.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Robb, Councillor Ross,
Yep.
Councillor Salamati,
Here.
Councillor Scott,
Yep.
Councillor Shearer,
Here.
Councillor Thompson,
Here.
Councillor Toner, Councillor Walker.
Here.
Thank you. Councillor Watson. Thank you. I'll now hand you back to Cleland. Thank you.
Thanks, Susan. So if I could move to declaration of interest, can I ask if there are any interests that colleagues want to share today, declare today? Sure. Okay, I'm not seeing any hands and nothing online. Okay, thank you. I'll move forward to item 2. There is a report before Council in relation to the outcome of the Scottish local government elections on the 5th of May. It details the ward by ward outcome of the elections. Simply, I'm asking Council to note the results of the election of candidates to serve on South Lanarkshire Council and to note the outcome of the election. Can I take it that's agreed? Okay, thank you very much. I'll now move on to item 3, which is the appointment of Provost. And can I call on Council for nominations for the post? So, Councillor Brown, first of all.
I don't have to do anything on the noise thing. No, that's all right. Thank you very much, Chief Executive. Thank you also for your moment of pseudo-political glory, which is, I'm sure you're glad to know, happily short-lived, but very necessary to our democracy. Could I also, if I may, thank former Provost Ian McCallan for your service over the past 5 years. Ian came to the role as a new councillor, but I think the Chamber will agree and should agree that he carried out his duties with grace and in an exemplary manner. And I think we're grateful to have had his services over the past 5 years. Now, I've got much pleasure in nominating Councillor Margaret Cooper as Provost of South Lanarkshire Council. I've known Margaret over 2 terms of the Council, I think, and her contribution to the Council over those years has been significant. She has a significant professional background of her own and a hinterland outside politics, as well as being an accomplished politician and a woman of principle. Now, it's fair to say that she and I had some little minor tensions at the beginning of the last council over minor things like the allocation of committee places and office space and things of that kind. She was certainly no walkover, and she'll be a formidable champion for South Lanarkshire Council as Provost. I've got to know Margaret, I think, well over these years and to have increasing respect for her abilities, for her judgment and have her insight. Not least, she showed her ability to work successfully across the council and across parties in her role as chair of the cross-party budget group. A sort of role that necessarily makes friends, but it's certainly one that commands respect. And I think Margaret commanded respect in that particular role. It's not every councillor either who stands as an independent and is returned at the top of the poll. And I think it's appropriate that in a minority council, we should today propose the election of an experienced and independent provost to represent us in civic affairs and to preside over our deliberations. I can propose Margaret Individual party groups could give her a majority, but I believe she's the right person for the job in current circumstances, and I hope that the whole chamber will recognise her worth and support her in the new and demanding role to which we're calling her today. I formally move Chief Executive Margaret Cooper as Provost of South Lanarkshire Council.
Okay, can I check, Robert, do you have a seconder for your proposal? And Councillor Allison.
Thank you, Chief Executive. First of all, I'd just like to concur with Robert on our thanks for Ian McCallan for his service for the last 5 years. Being a ward councillor with him, I've seen it firsthand, and he's certainly set a standard that for others to follow. So thank him very much. Also concur with Robert in what he has said about a proposal of Margaret. I would also highlight the fact, as he has done, she has been a tenacious councillor for the last period of time when I've been in here, and I think it'll be quite handy to have her in the Provost chair rather than arguing with us in the floor of the committee. So I have no hesitation in seconding her for the role of Provost.
Thank you, Councillor Allison. Can I check for other nominations? Councillor Ross.
Thanks very much, President. I would move and nominate Ian McCallan. I think everybody recognises the job that Ian's done, a splendid job over the last 5 years, and it gives me great pleasure to nominate him again as Provost for the year.
Okay, and again, Councillor Ross, can I check, do you have a seconder? Okay, Councillor Chalmers. Councillor Chalmers has confirmed her seconding. Can I check, is there any other nominations for the post of Provost? I don't see any other nominations, so I'll ask the clerk to move to the vote, and picking up Robert Brown's cue, it allows me to demit office, and I'm very clear that no one would ever vote for me, so it'll be a pleasure to hand over. Susan.
Okay, thanks, Cleland. For the purposes of the vote, the nomination of Councillor Cooper, proposed by Councillor Brown and seconded by Councillor Allison, will be considered as the motion. The nomination of Councillor McCallan, proposed by Councillor Ross and seconded by Councillor Chalmers, will be considered as the amendment. Therefore, when I read out your name, could you please indicate whether you wish to vote for the motion or the amendment? Councillor Allison? Councillor Anderson? Councillor Barker?
Motion.
Councillor Bradley? Councillor Brogan?
Motion.
Councillor Brown? Councillor Archie Buchanan? Councillor Matthew Buchanan?
Motion.
Councillor Kalikis?
Amendment.
Thank you. Councillor Carmichael? Councillor Chalmers? Councillor Clark? Councillor Convery?
Motion.
Councillor Cooper? Councillor Corbett?
Motion.
Councillor Cowan? Councillor Cowie? Councillor Dempsey? Councillor Devlin? Councillor Dewar? Councillor Donnelly? Councillor Fagan?
Motion.
Councillor Faulkner? Councillor Faulkner?
Motion.
Councillor Ferguson?
Amendment.
Thank you. Councillor Ferguson Miller?
Amendment.
Councillor Frame? Councillor Fulton? Councillor Gowland? Councillor Gray?
Amendment.
Councillor Hamilton? Councillor Handybode? Councillor Horn? Councillor Horsham? Councillor Hose? Councillor Keat?
Motion.
Thank you. Councillor Kerr? Councillor Lambie? Councillor Lennon? Councillor Lockhart?
Motion.
Councillor Logan? Councillor Loudon? Councillor Hugh MacDonald. Councillor Marsh.
Amendment.
Councillor McAdams.
Motion.
Councillor McCallan. Councillor McClymont. Councillor McCreary. Councillor Leslie MacDonald. Councillor McDougall.
Amendment.
Councillor McGeever. Councillor McLaughlin. Councillor Nelson. Councillor Nugent.
Amendment.
Councillor Ray. Councillor Razak.
Motion.
Councillor Robb. Councillor Ross.
Amendment.
Councillor Salamati.
Amendment.
Councillor Scott.
Motion.
Councillor Shearer.
Amendment.
Councillor Thompson. Councillor Toner. Councillor Walker.
Motion.
Councillor Watson. Okay, I'll just tally them up. There was 35 for the motion, 28 for the amendment and 1 abstention. The motion therefore is declared carried.
Okay, thanks, Susan. If I can now confirm that Councillor Cooper has been elected as Provost of Council and ask Councillor Cooper to take up her position. Thank you.
Good morning and welcome to this meeting, the first full meeting of South Lanarkshire Council. I'd like to extend my gratitude to my colleagues and peers who have supported me into this position today. I'd also like to share in the thoughts of for Ian McCallan. He has done an excellent job over the last 5 years and he's been a very easy man to work with, and Ian and I have shared many discussions and he was always keen to listen and take advice, as will I. I'm truly honoured to have been given this position and I want to assure everybody across the chamber that I hope that we can work together in the best interests of South Lanarkshire Council. And I would ask people to bear with me today as Cleland guides me through the agenda and make sure that I don't make any errors in taking us through that, and be gentle with me on this first occasion. So thank you very much for your support.
So, we'll now move to item 4 and the call for nominations for deputy.
I'd like to move to item 4, and could I call for nominations, please, for the post of Deputy Provost? Joe Fagan.
Function, but I would like to move Bert Thompson.
Do you have a seconder for that?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Jerry Convery. John?
Yes, I would like to move Janine Kalakis for Deputy Provost.
Thank you. Seconded Maureen Chalmers. Can we go to a vote, please?
Thank you, Provost. Again, for the purposes of the vote, the nomination of Councillor Thompson, proposed by Councillor Fagan and seconded by Councillor Convery, will be considered as a motion. The nomination of Councillor Kalikis, proposed by Councillor Ross and seconded by Councillor Chalmers, will be considered as the amendment. Therefore, when I read out your name, can you please indicate whether you wish to vote for the motion or the amendment? Councillor Allison? Councillor Anderson? Councillor Barker?
Motion.
Councillor Bradley? Councillor Brogan?
Motion.
Councillor Brown? Councillor Buchanan, Archie Buchanan? Councillor Matthew Buchanan?
Motion.
Councillor Kalikis?
Amendment.
Councillor Carmichael? Councillor Chalmers? Councillor Clark? Councillor Convery?
Motion.
Councillor Cooper?
Motion.
Councillor Corbett?
Motion.
Councillor Cowan? Councillor Cowie? Councillor Dempsey? Councillor Devlin? Councillor Dewar? Councillor Donnelly? Councillor Fagan?
Motion.
Councillor Faulkner?
Motion.
Councillor Ferguson?
Amendment.
Thank you. Councillor Ferguson Miller?
Amendment.
Councillor Frame? Councillor Fulton? Councillor Gowland? Councillor Gray?
Amendment.
Councillor Hamilton? Councillor Handybode? Councillor Horn? Councillor Horsham? Councillor Hose? Councillor Keats?
Motion.
Councillor Kerr? Councillor Lambie? Councillor Lennon?
Motion.
Councillor Lockhart?
Motion.
Councillor Logan? Councillor Loudon? Councillor Hugh MacDonald? Councillor Marsh?
Amendment.
Councillor McAdams?
Motion.
Councillor McCallan? Councillor McClymont? Councillor McCreary? Councillor Leslie MacDonald? Councillor McDougall?
Amendment.
Councillor McGeever? Councillor McLaughlin? Councillor Nelson? Councillor Nugent?
Amendment.
Councillor Ray? Councillor Razak?
Motion.
Councillor Rock? Councillor Ross?
Amendment.
Councillor Salamati?
Amendment.
Thank you. Councillor Scott?
Motion.
Councillor Shearer?
Amendment.
Councillor Thompson? Councillor Toner? Councillor Walker?
Motion.
And Councillor Watson? There was 35 votes for the motion, 28 for the amendment and 1 abstention. Therefore, the motion is declared carried.
Could I invite Councillor Bert Thompson, Deputy Provost, to join us at the table, please? Can I hand you your badge of office and congratulations? Thank you. Okay, can we move on now to item 5, please?
Councillor Allison wants to speak.
Sorry. Alec?
Maybe need to move the mics closer.
Can everybody maybe move their mic a bit closer to them, if that's possible? And mics are not on.
Can I check with members on Teams? Are you able to hear us?
No. We can hear you, Cleland. Yeah.
Intermittent.
Okay, I'll just check with the provost and see if we can get the microphone a little bit closer.
Provost, if I may, it's a sign language interpreter working for Councillor Ferguson. Sound has been intermittent throughout, which has obviously made it difficult to interpret. With your permission, if the sound does cut out, I may need to interrupt. I appreciate that will affect proceedings, but I just wanted to show you the courtesy of checking with you first. Thank you, Provost.
Just check if we can hear.
Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. We're moving now to item 5, appointment of leader of the council. Can I ask for nominations for this appointment? Jerry Convery.
Provost, it gives me great pleasure to move Joe Fagan to lead this council the next 5 years.
Do you have a seconder? Councillor Brown. Thank you. Councillor Chalmers.
It's me great pleasure to nominate John Ross to lead this council for a further 5 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Councillor McGeever. Horsham, sorry. Thank you. Are there any other nominations for the leader of the council? None. Can we move to a vote, please?
Can I just check that you hear me okay in Teams?
It's just because of making Susan try and get it right over it.
Okay, can everyone hear in Teams?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. I think some of the people in Teams are struggling to hear what members are saying when they're voting. The ones in Teams are struggling to hear whether you're indicating motion or amendments. So again, I think it's just perhaps bringing your mic close. Okay, so again, for the purposes of the vote, the nomination of Councillor Fagan, proposed by Councillor Convery and seconded by Councillor Brown, will be considered as a motion.
John Anderson's pressed his button.
Sorry, Councillor Anderson, were you looking to come in? No? Did you press? No. All right. Sorry about that. Sorry, the nomination of Councillor Fagan will be considered as the motion. The nomination of Councillor Ross, proposed by Councillor Chalmers and seconded by Councillor Horsham, will be considered as the amendment. Again, if I read out your name, can you please indicate whether you wish to vote for the motion or the amendment? Councillor Allison? Motion. Do you want me to repeat that so they hear?
Yes, please.
Do you want, right, I'll repeat whatever members are saying for the benefit of the interpreters. Okay. Councillor Allison voted for the motion. Councillor Anderson?
Amendment.
Voted for the amendment. Councillor Barker?
Motion.
That was for the motion. Councillor Bradley? That was for the amendment. Councillor Brogan?
Motion.
That was for the motion. Councillor Brown? That was for the motion. Councillor Archie Buchanan? That was for the amendment. Councillor Matthew Buchanan?
Motion.
That was for the motion. Councillor Kalikis?
Amendment.
That was for the amendment. Councillor Carmichael? That was for the motion. Councillor Chalmers? That was for the amendment. Councillor Clark? That was for the amendment. Councillor Convery?
Motion.
That was for the motion. Provost?
Motion.
That was for the motion. Councillor Corbett?
Motion.
That was for the motion, Councillor Cowan. That was for the amendment, Councillor Cowie. That was for the motion, Councillor Dempsey. That was for the amendment, Councillor Devlin. That was for the motion, Councillor Dewar. That was for the amendment, Councillor Donnelly. That was for the amendment, Councillor Fagan.
Motion.
That was for the motion, Councillor Faulkner.
Motion.
That was for the motion, Councillor Ferguson.
Amendment.
For the amendment, Councillor Ferguson Miller.
Amendment.
That was for the amendment, Councillor Frame. That was for the amendment, Councillor Fulton. That was for the amendment, Councillor Gowland. That was for the motion, Councillor Gray.
Amendment.
For the amendment, Councillor Hamilton. That was for the motion, Councillor Handybode. That was for the motion, Councillor Horn. That was for the amendment, Councillor Horsham. That was for the amendment, Councillor Hose. That was for the motion, Councillor Keats.
Motion.
That was for the motion, Councillor Kerr. That was for the motion, Councillor Lambie. That was for the motion, Councillor Lennon. That was for the motion, Councillor Lockhart.
Motion.
That was for the motion, Councillor Logan. That was for the motion, Councillor Loudon. That was for the amendment, Councillor Hugh MacDonald. That was for the amendment, Councillor Marsh.
Amendment.
That was for the amendment, Councillor McAdams.
Motion.
That was for the motion, Councillor McCallan. That was for the amendment, Councillor McClymont. That was for the motion, Councillor McCreary. That was for the motion, Councillor Leslie MacDonald. That was for the motion, Councillor McDougall.
Amendment.
That was for the amendment, Councillor McGeever. That was for the motion, Councillor McLaughlin.
Motion.
That was for the motion, Councillor Nelson. That was for the motion, Councillor Nugent.
Amendment.
That was for the amendment, Councillor Ray. That was for the motion, Councillor Razak.
Motion.
That was for the motion, Councillor Robb.
Amendment.
That was for the amendment, Councillor Ross.
Amendment.
That was for the amendment, Councillor Salamati.
Amendment.
That was for the amendment, Councillor Scott.
Motion.
That was for the motion, Councillor Shearer.
Amendment.
That was for the amendment, Councillor Thompson.
Motion.
That was for the motion, Councillor Toner. That was for the amendment, Councillor Walker.
Motion.
That was for the motion, Councillor Watson. Okay, there was 35 voted for the motion, 28 for the amendment and 1 abstention. The motion is therefore declared carried.
I'd like to invite the new leader of the council, Councillor Fagan, to say a few words.
Provost, thank you. Congratulations on your election. And can I also echo the earlier sentiments that you made and others have made about Ian McCallan, who I think has been an exemplary provost for South Lanarkshire over these past 5 years. I want to thank you and thank the Council for the confidence you have placed in me today to lead a new administration in South Lanarkshire. I said to our workforce, I said to our service users, I said to our communities that South Lanarkshire needed new leadership. Now it has arrived. And as the Council will learn shortly, this new administration will be a new kind of administration. Labour-led, but not Labour only. The basis of this administration will be a partnership agreement between the Labour and Liberal Democrat groups and an agreement to which the leader of the Independent group is also a party. An agreement that stops short of a full coalition, but an agreement that is nonetheless the basis of joint working, cooperation and better local government. Partners still have further work to do to develop our joint programme for South Lanarkshire. I can tell the Council that we've already identified a number of early priorities. The need to address economic recovery, the need to support our frontline services and show our workforce that this new administration is on their side. The need for new action, new direction and new accountability in the Council's response to climate change, and we'll put forward proposals on that shortly. The need for action on the cost of living crisis to help alleviate the pressure on household bills for families in the greatest need. We are a progressive alliance of councillors, a progressive alliance that can reach out across the Council, as we've shown today, and we hope command a majority when it comes to tackling the big issues facing our communities. Under the arrangement I am proposing, both the SNP and Conservative groups are formally recognised, as the opposition groups are now, as opposition groups. It's our partnership that has been put into the power. But as we know, opposition parties need not be opposed on every issue. We will seek to build an inclusive council and reach out across party lines. There will be roles for both opposition parties under this arrangement. Work with us. As a minority administration, taking the challenges ahead issue by issue, vote by vote, we understand that collaborative and inclusive politics is critical to our success. Whatever our differences with the outgoing administration, I think it is important to acknowledge today our common ground, whether it was the Modern Slavery Charter, the Community Wealth Building Commission, the Council's commitment to house building. Today marks the end of one administration and the creation of a new one, but there are important areas of continuity and consensus that will endure into the new Council. Council should recognise the outgoing leader, John Ross, and his administration for his work on and their work on those issues and on many more. And to say that I would also like to recognise Councillor Chalmers as well, specifically, for her personal dedication to the success of community planning in South Lanarkshire. So from one leader to another, and from one administration to another, let me say simply and sincerely, thank you. We have work to do. Over the course of the local election, I've been campaigning, as we all were, across South Lanarkshire. Our council area is one of the most geographically diverse in all of Scotland. There are common themes and common challenges. In too many places, people felt that their town, their village, their community had already seen its best days, that their community was in decline, and that the visions of hopeful Scotland or a global Britain portrayed by national politicians bore little relation to their lives. That councillors could do little to help, even if they wanted to. That sense of decline is dangerous, and I make that point to all parties, across parties. It's how apathy sets in. It can become self-fulfilling, and we all have a duty and a responsibility to turn the council around and turn around that sense of decline, to show people, the people of South Lanarkshire, that there is a better future, where public services are resourced fairly, key workers are rewarded fairly, the economy is moving again, where our local environment is improving, and where new opportunities that the last generation did not have are created for the next. In the current financial climate, councils cannot do everything. We are all acutely aware of that. But we've got to do everything that we can to improve the lives of our people, our citizens. That's the challenge before this council. It's the challenge we must all rise to for the greater good of South Lanarkshire. I look forward to working with all parties in that endeavour in the years ahead. Thank you.
I can invite our outgoing leader, John Ross, to say a few words.
Thanks very much, Provost, for the opportunity.
John.
Mike. Thanks very much for the opportunity to say a couple of words, Provost. It was my honour earlier to nominate Ian McCallan as Provost. Sadly, that wasn't to be. I think everybody has acknowledged that Ian was an outstanding ambassador for South Lanarkshire. He carried out the duties of his office with elegance
and decorum, and exemplified the whole ethos of the SNP administration in trying to open up the council to include and take regard of the views of every political party represented here today. And that's why I find it so disappointing that this council has been hijacked by a backroom unionist pact operating on a constitutional level when this should have been all about local politics and doing the best for the citizens of South Lanarkshire. You more than most, Provost, know how involved you've been in a democratic process under the SNP administration. And that's why I find it so disappointing. No other party put forward sufficient candidates to take control of this council. And I think the public will find it exceptionally hard to accept that the biggest party with an increased share of the vote should not be forming the administration. Thanks for these few words.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Ross. Can I now move on to item 6 on the agenda, please? Sorry, Councillor Brown.
Going to press that. Thank you very much, Provost. I'd like to say a few words, if I may, on this issue as well. And I'd like to, if I may, to congratulate and to thank Joe for the tone he took in his introductory remarks. He made the very valid point, we can't do everything, but we should do everything we can. And that was a phrase which I think very much resonated with me, and I think with members across the chamber. I'm bound to say I didn't anticipate this particular outcome at the start of the election campaign, but I do want to reflect a little bit on the implications of it. And in response to John, might I say this is, I think there's a need to recognise the realities of what the STV system produces in local authorities in this regard, which is not a majority council, and it's not a situation where one party has got the absolute say in these matters. Both Labour and the Liberal Democrats increased our representation on the council, and it's entirely appropriate that we seek to take up the mantle of leadership for the next 5 years. But we are, as the last administration was, still a minority council. And in my personal view, that's very much in the interest of the public and of good governance in South Lanarkshire. It means that key decisions need to be discussed and debated, not imposed by a party whip, that good ideas from whatever source should be welcome, and they will be welcome, and that the end result is often better than the proposals of just one party. So I very much want the new administration, certainly from my influence, I would give my guarantee to that effect, to be an inclusive and outward-looking one, which recruits and harnesses the talents of the whole council and of the tremendous workforce which delivers council services in our area for the public. Elections and political change can be brutal and very sudden for those involved, both those who get elected and those who don't get elected, administrations and those who cease to be the administration. I would like to thank the outgoing administration of John Ross and his colleagues for their work, and if I may say so, for their courtesy and consideration in the way that they ran matters. That is a legacy to be cherished and to be built on. But the new administration too is based on a partnership of principle and a policy raft which will be developed in detail over the next few weeks, containing a number of new directions, as Joe has touched on, but also building on the work of the past. I don't think any council has come into office probably with as many challenges as this faces this council, indeed governments at all levels, with the aftermath of COVID, the economic challenges, the cost of living challenges, and obviously the issues to do with council services. But I believe, nevertheless, that South Lanarkshire should be a council which aspires to be one of the best in Scotland in many areas, in the education and life chances for our children, the care available to older people in the evening of their lives, in sport and culture, in our response to climate change and the quality of our house and built environment, perhaps above all in the way in which we support economic recovery and renewal after the ravages of COVID. Liberal Democrats are glad to be able to play a constructive role in the corporate and community life of South Lanarkshire and of its localities, and we look forward to the opportunity of the next 5 years to serve our people and our council. But I do hope that the inclusive tone that the leader of the administration set at the beginning is one which will be responded to over time and which will lead, I think, to good governance, good outcomes and good results for the people of South Lanarkshire. Thank you very much, Provost.
I would invite Councillor Allison to say a few words, please.
Not prepared anything. I wasn't intending to speak at this time. Our position is the same as it was 5 years ago. We will work with whoever to get the best for our constituents. We have voted, as someone has already said, in a nationalistic route, if you like. But I do not think that we could have been seen as being credible if we had not voted in a unionist manner, being the strongest, the main unionist party. We will continue to work for the benefit of our constituents at all times throughout the next 5 years, as we have done for the previous 5 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Allison. Could I invite nominations, please, now for Deputy Leader of the Council? Councillor Fagan.
Provost, thank you. I would wish to move Jerry Convery.
Do you have a seconder? Councillor Brown, thank you. Councillor Ross.
Yes, I wish to nominate Councillor Chalmers.
Do you have a seconder? Councillor Horsham, thank you. Can we move to a vote, please?
Okay, members, we've resolved the sound issue in terms of before the vote that all the mics will be open, but you're still required to press the button in the middle in order that your sound will be audible to the people in MS Teams. Okay, again, if I just say for the purposes of the vote, the nomination of Councillor Convery, proposed by Councillor Fagan and seconded by Councillor Brown, will be considered as the motion. The nomination of Councillor Chalmers, proposed by Councillor Ross and seconded by Councillor Horsham, will be considered as the amendment. Therefore, when I read out your name, can you please indicate whether you wish to vote for the motion or the amendment? Councillor Allison.
Motion.
Can I just check the people in Teams are hearing that okay now? Yeah, okay. Councillor Anderson.
Amendment.
Councillor Barker.
Motion.
Councillor Bradley. Councillor Brogan.
Motion.
Councillor Brown.
Motion.
Councillor Archie Buchanan.
Amendment.
Councillor Matthew Buchanan.
Motion.
Councillor Kalikis.
Amendment.
Councillor Carmichael.
Motion.
Councillor Chalmers.
Amendment.
Councillor Clark.
Amendment.
Councillor Convery.
Motion.
Councillor Provost, sorry.
Motion.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Corbett.
Motion.
Councillor Cowan. Councillor Cowie.
Motion.
Councillor Dempsey.
Amendment.
Councillor Devlin. Councillor Dewar.
Amendment.
Councillor Donnelly. Councillor Fagan.
Motion.
Councillor Faulkner.
Motion.
Councillor Ferguson.
Amendment.
Thank you. Councillor Ferguson Miller.
Amendment.
Councillor Frame.
Amendment.
Councillor Fulton. Councillor Gowland. Councillor Gray.
Amendment.
Councillor Hamilton.
Motion.
Councillor Handybode. Councillor Horn.
Amendment.
Councillor Horsham.
Amendment.
Councillor Hose. Councillor Keat. Okay. I'll come back to Councillor Keat to see if we can resolve that issue. Councillor Kerr.
Motion.
Councillor Lambie.
Motion.
Councillor Lennon.
Motion.
Councillor Lockhart.
Motion.
Councillor Logan. Councillor Loudon. Councillor Hugh MacDonald.
Amendment.
Councillor Marsh.
Amendment.
Councillor McAdams. Sorry, Councillor McAdams. I think we might have Councillor Keat back. Councillor Keat, are you able to give me your vote for the
Hi
motion?
there. Sorry, I think I can hear you now. I'm voting for the motion.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McCallan. Councillor McClymont.
Motion.
Councillor McCreary.
Motion.
Councillor MacDonald. Leslie MacDonald.
Motion.
Councillor McDougall.
Amendment.
Councillor McGeever.
Motion.
Councillor McLaughlin.
Motion.
Councillor Nelson.
Motion.
Councillor Nugent.
Amendment.
Councillor Ray.
Motion.
Councillor Razak.
Motion.
Councillor Robb. Councillor Ross.
Amendment.
Councillor Salamati.
Amendment.
Councillor Scott.
Motion.
Councillor Shearer.
Amendment.
Councillor Thompson. Councillor Toner. Councillor Walker.
Motion.
Councillor Watson.
Abstain.
Okay, we have 35 for the motion, 28 for the amendment and 1 abstention. The motion is therefore declared carried.
I'd like to confirm that Councillor Convery has been elected as Deputy Leader of South Lanarkshire Council, and I'd like to invite a few words from you.
Honour, I'll do what I've done all my political life, and that is serve the people who put me here.
Must apologise. This is an emotional day for me, and I've said all my political life I've only done one thing, and that was to serve people. And that's the tone that the Leader of the Council espoused earlier on there, and we will work with people to give the best results for the constituents that we serve. So thank you.
Thank you. Can I invite Geraldine McCann, please, to take us through item 7 in the agenda.
Thank you, Provost. Item 7 in the agenda is quite a long paper, so I only propose to summarise it rather than go through it in detail. It's starts on page 15 of your papers. The purpose of it is to allow the Council to consider and approve the decision-making arrangements and all of the procedural documentations which are attached to the report for the next term. Section 3 of the report on page 17 provides the background. The Council has always had well-established decision-making arrangements in place, and these are still considered to be fit for purpose. However, it is appropriate to allow you, as the Council at its statutory meeting, to determine whether you consider these as fit for purpose going forward. Section 4 of the report deals with the procedural documentation, and these are in Appendix 1. Now, these are very bulky documents, and Appendix 1 is on pages 23 to 207 of the report. These have all been reviewed and considered not only by officers of the Council but also by elected members working together in the Standards, Procedures and Advisory Forum in the last term, and these have been updated to reflect legislative changes and also changes that have occurred as a part of structural changes within the Council and reviews. Section 4.3 considers the standing orders on contracts. Now, you may note when you look at this document within your pack that certain paragraphs have been marked as deleted. Now, this is to reflect legislative changes. But if we had taken that paragraph out altogether and renumbered it, it would have knocked out all the procurement templates that have been set up and the officers are working to. So rather than do that, it was easier to just mark it as deleted. So hopefully you'll bear with us. And Once we update all of the procurement templates, we'll renumber the standing orders and contracts so it's easier to read. Section 5 of the report deals with the standing committees of the council. Now, these are the decision-making framework of the council, and they're listed in detail in recommendation 2.1, paragraph 2, and also in appendix 2 in your pack, which is in page 201. These are there for your approval. The membership of the committees are set out and explained in detail in section 6 of the report on page 18, and also in appendix 3 in page 209. Numbers reflect, where practical, the political makeup of the council, but I should stress it's not a legislative requirement to have the political composition of the council reflected on the committees. This section covers the membership of the standing committees, the area committees, and members are asked to nominate the members, as well as the chair and deputy chair of each of those bodies. Section 7 of the report on page 19 asks you to nominate senior councillors. The council is allowed by legislation to have up to 19 senior councillor posts, and these are outlined in that paragraph. Section 8 of the report on page 19 deals with the membership of forums. Now, forums have been in place in the council for quite a period of time, and these are still considered to be fit for purpose. These allow members to consider in more detail and scrutinise specific areas. Forum chairs are appointed by each forum at their first meeting. Section 9 of the report is the terms of reference, and this is on page 19 and also in the appendix on pages 182 to 206. Basically, the terms of reference set out the powers of the various bodies, the responsibilities and the membership of the council, standing committees and its forums. On section 10 of the report, this briefly sets out the mechanism for dealing with urgent business, because naturally business will come up in between committee meetings that can't wait. So this suggests that the leader of the council, the leader of the council, the deputy leader and the ruling group business manager are delegated to deal with that business and also urgent contracts. Any action undertaken will be reported to the next appropriate meeting of the particular committee, and signed off reports will also be circulated to opposition group leaders, so there is clear accountability and transparency. The cycle of meetings are set out in section 11, that is on page 20, and also in appendix 4 on pages 211 to 223. The council works to an 8-week cycle and also allows for a number of recess periods in the summer, Christmas, Easter and 1 week in October. The cycle of meetings are set out in section 11.1 and also in detail in the appendix. It's proposed that there is a condensed cycle of meetings. Now that's to allow the committees all to be set up, and these will start from the 13th of June and continue to the summer recess, and then the full cycle will start immediately after the summer recess. Section 12 deals with representation in outside bodies, and these are on page 20 and also in appendix 5 on pages 225 to 226. The council is asked to nominate a number of representations to various external organisations, joint boards and partnership bodies, etc. These have been reviewed by officers and also by lead organisations. As a matter of priority, the council is asked today to approve the nominations to those that are listed in appendix 5. Now that's to allow these bodies to re-establish following the election. Section 13 deals with the members' role profiles, and these are set out in Appendix 6 on page 227 to 232. And this basically sets out what what duties the various roles within the council would undertake. These have also been reviewed by the Standards, Procedures and Advisory Forum, so that is elected members. There is multi-member ward advice, which is set out in section 14 and in appendix 7. That's pages 233 to 234. And again, these have all been reviewed. The various implications section, I don't propose to go through these because they're quite well set out in the reports at section 16, 17, 18 and 19. And these are all on page 21 of the report. Now, I'm going to turn back to recommendations, and you have to bear with me because I'm going to read these out carefully so that you all know what you're being asked to vote on today. So, recommendation 1, you're being asked to approve that the standing orders on procedures, standing orders on contracts, scheme of delegation and financial regulations as detailed in the supporting documentation at Appendix 1 be approved. You're asked to establish the standing committees which are set out in paragraph 2 of that section. You're asked to approve the committee membership details, that is the number of the members on each committee and the political composition as outlined in paragraph 6.2 and 6.3 of the report and as detailed in appendix 3, and that authority be delegated to the Chief Executive in consultation with the leaders of the political and independent groups to finalise the membership on the basis of the numbers of members and associated political composition approved by the Council today. Recommendation 4, that the facility for individual groups to substitute up to a maximum of 4 members in terms of representation on the Executive Committee, Climate Change and Sustainability Committee, Resource Committees and on the Planning Committee be approved, and that appropriate notification be given to committee officers in advance of the meeting taking place. Recommendation 5, that the facility for individual groups to substitute up to a maximum of 2 members in the representation on the Licensing Committee, Risk and Audit Scrutiny Committee and the Petitions Committee be approved, and that notification be given to committee officers in advance. Recommendation 6, that nominations for the position of Chair and Deputy Chair for each standing committee be considered and approved. Recommendation 7, that consideration be given to the appointment of up to 19 senior councillor positions as outlined in paragraph 7.1. Recommendation 8, that the member forums as detailed in that paragraph be established. Recommendation 9, that the forum membership details as outlined in section 8 be approved and authority be delegated to the Chief Executive in consultation with the leaders of the political and independent groups to finalise the membership on the basis of the numbers and associated political composition. Approved today. Recommendation 10, that the facility for individual groups to substitute a maximum of 2 members in terms of their representation on these forums be approved and that notification be given in advance. Recommendation 11, that the revised terms of reference and membership of the Equal Opportunities Forum as detailed in Appendix 1 be approved. 12, that the terms of reference for the Council, committees and associated forums detailed in the documentation pack in Appendix 1 be approved. 13, that the following are appointed as ex officio members: Leader of the Council, Deputy Leader of the Council and Ruling Group Business Manager for the purpose of signing off delegated contracts and for urgent items of business in line with the approved standing orders. 14, that the cycle of meetings and proposed recess periods set out in Appendix 4 be approved, including the condensed meeting arrangements. 15, that member nominations be made by the Council to the bodies detailed in Appendix 5. 16, that the member role profiles detailed in Appendix 6 be approved. And 17, that Advice on the operation of multi-member wards detailed in Appendix 7 be noted. Thank you.
Thank you, Geraldine. Can I pass over to the Chief Executive now?
Thank you, Provost. Just to confirm, we've had an intimation from both the Labour and the SNP groups that they propose an amendment to the recommendations. You may want to determine from Council if there are any further amendments that need to be considered or any questions in relation to Geraldine's summary. After that, if there are no additional amendments, I understand there is broad agreement to taking the recommendations en bloc because these will be reflected in the amendments that are presented. So you may wish to check if there's any further amendments, Provost.
Do we have any further amendments? No.
Good.
Councillor Allison?
Yeah, I'm not aware that we have seen the amendments, or have I missed them somehow?
Provost, just to be helpful for Councillor Allison, there's an intimation that there are two amendments. They're still to be presented and seconded.
Can we see these amendments before we decide then on whether there are any further amendments?
Okay, that's within the Provost prerogative, but if the Provost is happy to do so, you could invite the nominee for the various amendments and the seconders to speak to their amendments. But if you could also give time for the clerks to issue out copies of that amendment, that would be helpful, just so that they're in front of members. Thank you.
Could I give time just now for the clerks to issue out the amendments, please? And I'll take Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Provost. It was just on that point, if we could possibly have an adjournment for a specific time so that we can consider the amendments when they're circulating.
Yep, I'm happy to give a 10-minute adjournment.
Thank you very much.
Comfort break right now, thanks. I hope that members have now had an opportunity to read the papers that were presented to you, and I would like to call on Joe Fagan, the Leader of the Council, to present his amendments.
Thank you, Provost. The amendment from the Labour Group, which I expect will become the motion, retains much of the paper as is. It makes a small number of changes, one which is to elevate and to change the status of the Climate Change Committee and the role of the chair. The other is to establish, after the issues that are developing in adult social care, to establish a commission to consider the future of adult social care and to report back to the Council. A number of nominations are made which outline the basis of the new administration, and as indicated earlier, there will be positions and opportunities for opposition parties to take on roles under this new arrangement. Where appointments are not made in the paper today, I'm asking that the Chief Executive be delegated to fill those vacancies in consultation with the political groups. Thanks.
Thank you. I confirm that Robert Brown has seconded that. Can I ask the Councillor Ross to move his amendment, please?
Certainly, Provost. If you can bear with me a second. I'm happy to move the amendment on behalf of the SNP group. Most of the paper is as is. However, we have a change there as far as the Climate Change Sustainability Committee is concerned. We would like that to have the same standing as all of the other committees and paid an SRA to reflect the importance that it requires. I don't know if you'll allow me to say a couple of words on why we're moving this amendment at this time. In moving the amendment, the SNP group are honouring the confidence that the people of South Lanarkshire have placed in the SNP by voting us again as the largest single party in council and by an increased share of the vote. They recognise the achievements won by a minority administration who tried to be inclusive in everything we did. By any normal standards, others would have accepted the democratic will of the voters. What a slap in the face it is to every resident who voted and thought that democracy was at work and that they were electing politicians who would put local politics first. Yet here we are. As I said before, and I don't make any apology, the council's been taken over by a backroom unionist pact, as just admitted by Councillor Allison, with an agenda which has no place in local politics. A unionist pact run by a Labour group who talk of working with others, but who for the last 3 years wouldn't even enter into budget talks with any other party in council. Honestly, I think it's a sad day for democracy in South Lanarkshire if our amendment is not accepted. But I will make this pledge. We'll hold the new administration to account on every false promise they have made and expose them at every turn. I think the people of South Lanarkshire deserve nothing less than that. Thanks very much, Provost.
Thanks for your comments, Councillor Ross. Councillor Chalmers. Thank you. The motion, the amendment is seconded by Councillor Chalmers. Can we move to a vote now, please?
Okay, we have the motion by Councillor Fagan, seconded by Councillor Brown, and we have the amendment by Councillor Ross, seconded by Councillor Chalmers. Can I just check that every member has a copy of those before we proceed to the vote? Okay, I'll proceed to the vote now. Councillor Allison?
Motion.
Councillor Anderson?
Amendment.
Councillor Barker?
The motion.
Councillor Bradley?
Amendment.
Councillor Brogan?
Motion.
Councillor Brown?
Motion.
Councillor Archie Buchanan?
Amendment.
Councillor Matthew Buchanan.
Motion.
Councillor Kalikis.
Amendment.
Councillor Carmichael.
Motion.
Councillor Chalmers.
Amendment.
Councillor Clark.
Amendment.
Councillor Convery.
Motion.
Provost.
Motion.
Councillor Corbett.
Motion.
Councillor Cowan. Councillor Cowie.
Motion.
Councillor Dempsey.
Amendment.
Councillor Devlin. Councillor Dewar.
Amendment.
Councillor Donnelly.
Amendment.
Councillor Fagan.
Motion.
Councillor Faulkner.
Motion.
Councillor Ferguson.
Amendment.
Councillor Ferguson Miller.
Amendment.
Councillor Frame.
Amendment.
Councillor Fulton. Councillor Gowland. Councillor Gray.
Amendment.
Councillor Hamilton.
Motion.
Councillor Handybode. Councillor Horn.
Amendment.
Councillor Horsham.
Amendment.
Councillor Hose. Councillor Keat.
Motion.
Councillor Kerr. Councillor Lambie.
Motion.
Councillor Lennon. Councillor Lockhart.
Motion.
Councillor Logan. Councillor Loudon.
Amendment.
Councillor Hugh MacDonald.
Amendment.
Councillor Marsh.
Amendment.
Councillor McAdams.
Motion.
Councillor McCallan. Councillor McClymont.
Motion.
Councillor McCreary.
Motion.
Councillor Leslie MacDonald. Councillor McDougall.
Amendment.
Councillor McGeever. Councillor McLachlan.
Motion.
Councillor Nelson.
Motion.
Councillor Nugent.
Amendment.
Councillor Ray.
Motion.
Councillor Razak.
Motion.
Councillor Robb.
Amendment.
Councillor Ross.
Amendment.
Councillor Shalamati.
Amendment.
Councillor Scott.
Motion.
Councillor Shearer.
Amendment.
Councillor Thompson. Councillor Toner. Councillor Walker.
Motion.
Councillor Watson.
Abstain.
Okay, there was 35 for the motion, 28 for the amendment and 1 abstention. The motion is therefore declared carried.
Okay, I'd like to pass over to Geraldine McCann to take us through item 8.
Thank you, Provost. Item 8 seeks election of members to the divisional licensing boards. South Lanarkshire has 4 divisional licensing boards, 1 for Clydesdale area, 1 for East Kilbride area, 1 for Hamilton area and 1 for Rutherglen and Cambuslang area. The Divisional Licensing Board responsibilities are set out in paragraph 3.2 of the report on page 235. For each licensing division, 1/3 of the members must be councillors for a ward area within that division. In all cases, a licensing division must consist of a minimum of 5 elected members and a maximum of 10 elected members. That is set out in the Licensing Scotland Act and we can't alter that. The membership of each of the divisions should reflect the political composition of each of the 4 geographical areas. Certain individuals are not allowed to be members of the licensing board, and these are set out in section 4.1 of the report. And that is people who would have a conflict of interest, such as a premises licence holder, an employee of a premises licence holder, someone who is engaged in the business of producing or selling alcohol, a director or other officer of a company involved in that business, or an employee who works in that business. The implications are set out in sections 5 to 9 of the report, but I would point out to you the implications in section 8, and that is it's a requirement for members of the licensing division to undergo and pass an exam provided by an accredited provider within 3 months of being appointed to the licensing board. Thank you. Taking you back to the recommendations, Provost, I am inviting members to approve that the number of members be elected to each licensing division be 10 rather, and that the required number of members for each of the 4 licensing divisions be elected, and that authority be delegated to the Chief Executive in consultation with the leaders of the political and independent groups to finalise that membership. Thank you, Provost.
Thank you, Geraldine. Can I ask if there are any questions for Geraldine? Okay, can we agree the report? Thank you. The following items are submitted for noting. Items 9 through to 22 and 23. Can we agree those items? Thank you. I'd like to thank, I don't have any other urgent business before us today, and I would like to thank all of the members, both online and in person, for your attendance at today's meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.